Whose Escalade is this? Pull over. Now.
It's mine, officer.
Yours.
Right.
License and registration.
Already in your hand, officer.
There is absolutely no way someone like you owns a vehicle like this. Step out. I'm searching it.
I do not consent to any search.
I wasn't asking.
Let that sink in for a second. A man driving his own vehicle on a public road, breaking zero laws, just told an officer he did not consent to a search, and that officer looked him dead in the eye and said, "I wasn't asking." Now here is where this story stops being ordinary and becomes something else entirely. The man sitting calmly behind that wheel wasn't just any driver. He was Chief Adrian Cole, 24-year law enforcement veteran, brought into Brookdale specifically because this department had a racial profiling problem so severe. The federal government was already watching, and on just his third day on the job, Cole had done something no chief before him had ever attempted. He drove his personal Escalade, straight through the neighborhoods with the highest complaint rates, windows up, music off. Waiting to see exactly which officers would pull over a black man for the crime of driving something expensive. Officer Trent Calloway, 6 years on the force, 2 prior complaints for racially motivated stops, both quietly dismissed, never saw it coming. He didn't stop a suspect that afternoon on Jefferson Avenue. He didn't stop a criminal. He didn't stop someone who looked suspicious. He stopped his own boss. And here's the part that changes everything. Calloway's body camera was already running, capturing every word, every threat, every single violation. But that wasn't all. The moment those red and blue lights appeared in his mirror, Cole had activated something else, something only he knew about, something Calloway never thought to look for. What that was, we'll get to that. Now, before this story goes any further, drop a comment right now. What city or country are you watching from? We read every single one. And if the idea of a cop profiling the very man hired to hold cops accountable makes your blood boil, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what Officer Calloway does next will make you question everything you think you know about who really holds the power.
Stay in the vehicle. Hands where I can see them.
They're visible, officer.
Don't speak unless I ask you something.
And just like that, Calloway stopped being a traffic officer and started being something else entirely. He circled the Escalade slowly, not checking, not inspecting, performing, like a man who had already written the ending and was simply acting out the middle. His eyes dragged across every inch of the vehicle, the hood, the panels, the tinted windows, searching for something, anything, that could justify what he had already decided to do. He found nothing, but he kept circling anyway. Inside the Escalade, Chief Adrian Cole watched him through the side mirror. Still, quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from fear. It comes from knowledge, because Cole knew something Calloway didn't. He knew exactly how this encounter was going to end, and while Calloway circled that vehicle looking for evidence, Cole reached down, slowly, almost casually, and pressed a single button on the center console. One button, that was all it took. Now, here is where you need to pay attention, because what that button activated is going to matter more than anything else in this story. We'll come back to it. But right now, Calloway was still circling, still performing, still completely unaware that the ground beneath him was already shifting. Jefferson Avenue moved around them both, indifferent at first. A delivery truck slowing as its driver noticed the patrol car, a woman pausing mid-stride on the sidewalk, then stopping completely. Then a teenager across the street, stopping his bicycle, standing over the frame, just watching. Then something changed. One phone appeared, then another, then a third. Not police phones. Not official cameras, just ordinary people, recording an ordinary injustice on an ordinary afternoon. And Calloway hadn't noticed a single one. He completed his circle and returned to the driver's window. Slower this time, heavier, like whatever he had been looking for during that walk. He'd convinced himself he'd found. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at Cole through the glass, the way someone stares at a problem, right before they make it worse. Then his jaw tightened. His hand moved to his belt, and his voice came out low, flat, absolute.
Get out of the vehicle, right now.
Officer, can you tell me the specific violation that justifies this stop?
This is the last time I ask. Get out.
All right.
Cole opened the door slowly, both hands visible, every movement measured, controlled, like a man who had rehearsed this moment, because in a way, he had. What Calloway still hadn't realized. Was that Cole stepping out of that vehicle? Wasn't a surrender, it was the beginning of the end. For Officer Trent Calloway, the phones on that sidewalk kept recording, the body camera on Calloway's chest kept recording, and that single button Cole had pressed quietly, calmly, without Calloway ever noticing, was recording too. 3 cameras, 1 encounter, and an officer who thought he was in control didn't know about a single one of them.
Over there, don't move, don't speak.
I do not consent to any search of this vehicle, officer.
That's cute.
That's the law.
Out here. I am the law.
Out here, I am the law. Take a second with that. An officer in full uniform on a public street, surrounded by witnesses, just told a man exercising his constitutional rights that the law was whatever he decided it was. That one sentence said everything about Officer Trent Calloway that his complaint file had been trying to say for 6 years. Cole didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't reach for his phone. He simply moved to the sidewalk as instructed, hands relaxed, back straight, and watched. But here's what nobody on that street understood yet, including Calloway. Cole wasn't just watching, he was counting. Every violation, every ignored warning, every moment Calloway chose power over procedure was being added to a mental list that was about to become something far more permanent than memory. Calloway turned back to the Escalade and went in, not carefully, not professionally, but with the energy of someone who had already decided guilt and was simply looking for something to attach it to. He yanked the driver's door wide open, leaned in deep, hands moving fast and careless, like the vehicle's owner wasn't standing 15 feet away, watching every single move. And then, something happened that stopped several bystanders mid-breath. Cole smiled, not loudly, not triumphantly, just the smallest, quietest curve at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile that doesn't come from amusement. It comes from recognition, the smile of a man watching a trap, close exactly as he designed it to. A woman on the sidewalk noticed it first. She lowered her phone slightly, looked at Cole, then back at Calloway, then back at Cole again, and something shifted behind her eyes. Because that smile didn't make sense yet. A man being illegally searched, whose vehicle was being rifled through without consent, whose rights were being casually dismissed on a public street, should not be smiling, unless he knew something nobody else did. And that question, that single burning question, that smile planted in the air. Why is he smiling? Is the question that changes everything going forward. Calloway found nothing in the front, nothing in the center console, nothing in the glove compartment, nothing that gave him a single legitimate reason to still be standing next to that vehicle. But instead of stepping back, instead of acknowledging what any reasonable officer would have acknowledged by now, he straightened up, looked directly at Cole standing on that sidewalk, and said something that made 3 people simultaneously stop recording and start recording again with both hands.
You know what your problem is? You people get something nice, and you think that means the rules don't apply to you.
Are you finished?
Not even close.
Officer Calloway, for the 3rd time, I do not consent to this search. I am formally stating that for the record.
There is no record.
There is no record, he actually said that, standing directly in front of a body camera. That had been running since the moment he stepped out of his cruiser. 3 cameras, remember? Calloway knew about one of them, didn't care about that one either, had absolutely no idea about the other 2. The rear hatch clicked open, and Officer Trent Calloway reached inside the vehicle of the man who had been hired to end careers. Exactly like his. What he was about to find in that trunk wasn't just going to end his shift. It was going to end everything.
Let's see what you're hiding back here.
I do not consent. You have no probable cause. The search is illegal.
Probable cause is my call, not yours.
You just made a very serious mistake.
Sure I did.
He opened it. After every warning, after every clearly stated refusal, after zero evidence of any crime, he opened it anyway. And that laugh, that soft, unbothered laugh, was the sound of a man who had never once faced a real consequence. 2 prior complaints, 2 investigations buried quietly, 2 people who had no power to force accountability. Calloway had learned exactly one lesson from all of it, that the badge protected everything. What he hadn't learned was that lessons have expiry dates. Cole stood at the curb, watching Calloway reach into that trunk, and felt nothing close to fear. What he felt was clarity, because this moment, right here, was exactly why he had driven that Escalade through Jefferson Avenue 3 days in a row. Not to catch anyone, not to set a trap, but to answer one question that no report, no internal review, no committee meeting had ever honestly answered. Would an officer of this department violate a citizen's rights? When they believed nobody important was watching? Calloway had just answered that question. Completely, irreversibly. And now Calloway was reaching deeper into the trunk, fingers moving past a gym bag, past a duffel, until they closed around something else entirely. Something flat, something hard, something that had been sitting in that trunk, waiting, with quiet patience, for exactly this moment.
Well, what do we have here?
I strongly suggest you think before you open that.
And why is that?
You'll understand the moment you do.
You'll understand the moment you do. Not a warning, not a threat, a statement of fact, delivered with the certainty of someone who had already seen the ending. While Calloway was still fumbling through the opening scene, that smirk on Calloway's face held for exactly one more second. Then something moved behind his eyes. Not fear, not yet, but the first thin crack. In the absolute confidence he had carried since the moment he hit those lights, he looked down at what was in his hands. Something official looking, something stamped, something that made his fingers slow, before he even fully registered why. And then, he opened it.
What else is in here?
Nothing that concerns this stop.
I'll be the judge of that.
Whatever you're reaching for, don't.
This yours?
Do not open that.
There it was, pushed toward the back of the trunk, almost deliberately out of sight. A black leather briefcase. No brand markings. No luggage tag. Just clean, dark, official looking in the way that certain objects carry their own authority. Without needing to announce it, Calloway pulled it forward, and the moment his hands closed around it, something changed in the air between the 2 men. Cole took one step toward the vehicle. Not rushed, not panicked, but deliberate in a way he hadn't been since stepping out of that Escalade. That single step said more than anything he had spoken out loud, and Calloway felt it. For just a fraction of a second, his hands stilled on the briefcase. Something in Cole's body language reaching him, the way a distant sound reaches you before you consciously identify what it is. But Calloway had come too far now. In his mind, this briefcase was the reason for everything. This was what the expensive vehicle was hiding. This was what the calm composure was protecting. He had been right all along. He just needed to open one latch. To prove it.
Officer Calloway, I am telling you clearly, do not open that.
You seem real nervous about this.
I am not nervous.
Then why do you care so much?
Because when you open that, everything changes.
Everything changes. Calloway stared at him for a long moment, searching Cole's face for a tell, a flinch, some sign that this was fear talking. He found none. And, somehow, that made him more certain, not less. Because, in Calloway's experience, calm meant guilt. Composure meant something to hide. Stillness meant, open the briefcase. He set it flat against the trunk floor, fingers on the latches. Cole watched from 3 feet away, arms at his sides, expression unreadable, The way a surgeon looks before the first incision. Not nervous. Not angry. Ready. The first latch clicked. Then the second. Calloway looked up one final time. Almost involuntarily. Like some part of him was asking for permission he would never request out loud. Cole said nothing. Just watched. And Calloway lifted the lid.
These are department documents.
Yes.
Official seal. Internal affairs. Where did you get these?
Keep reading.
No cash. No contraband. Nothing stolen. Nothing suspicious. Just folders. Stamped with the official seal of the Brookdale Police Department, sitting in that briefcase like they had always belonged there. Like they were waiting. Calloway's mind scrambled for an explanation. Civilian with official department documents. Forged? Stolen? Some kind of setup? He pulled himself together. Straightened up. Reminded himself who was holding the badge here.
I'm going to need you to explain how you came to be in possession of official police documents.
Turn to page 2.
I'm asking the questions here.
For now.
For now. 2 words that should have stopped everything. Should have made Calloway pause. Reassess. Ask himself why a man being illegally searched was speaking with the quiet confidence of someone holding all the cards. But Calloway was too deep in his own narrative now. Too invested in being right. He turned to page 2, and everything he thought he knew about this afternoon began to collapse. Because at the top of that page, in the clean, bold font of the Internal Affairs Division, was a name. Read that again. A name. His name. Full name. Badge number. 6-year service record laid out in black and white. And beneath that, a violation summary so precise, so detailed, so perfectly current, that Calloway's eyes stopped moving halfway down the page. His brain needed a moment. Because listed under recent violations was today. This stop, this exact stop, already documented, already time-stamped, already written up as if someone had known. Before it even happened, his hands weren't steady anymore. Now pause right here for just a second. Because if this story is doing to you what it should be doing, your jaw just dropped. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is exactly the moment you need to be. Because what comes next makes this look like the calm before the storm. Hit subscribe right now. And drop a comment. Did you see this coming?
How is today on here?
Because this stop was expected, officer.
Expected? What does that mean?
Read the bottom of the page.
Who are you?
Read the bottom of the page.
Calloway looked down. Past the violation list. Past the complaint history. Past 3 separate recommendations for disciplinary action. That had all been quietly buried. Until now. All the way to the bottom of the page, where a single line sat beneath a bold heading that read, Authorization. And beneath that heading, a signature. Clean. Deliberate. And a title. 3 words. Chief of Police. Calloway read the name beneath that title. Then he read it again. Then very slowly. Like a man whose legs have stopped working before his brain has caught up. He looked up from the document and stared at the man standing 3 feet away from him. The man he had pulled over for driving something too expensive. The man he had ordered out of his own vehicle. The man he had laughed at, threatened, searched without consent, warned, and ignored. That man was looking directly back at him. And for the first time since this stop began, Officer Trent Calloway had absolutely nothing to say.
You're actually the chief.
Yes,
The new chief. My chief.
your chief.
Those 2 words landed differently than anything else spoken on Jefferson Avenue that afternoon. Your chief. Not a question. Not a clarification. A confirmation. And Calloway felt every syllable of it. His mind went back. Involuntarily. Replaying the last 27 minutes like a film he couldn't stop. The moment he hit those lights, the window rolling down halfway. Whose Escalade is this? There's absolutely no way someone like you owns a vehicle like this. I wasn't asking. Every word he had spoken. Coming back now, not as memories, but as evidence. His own voice, his own choices, turned against him, by nothing more than the truth of who was sitting behind that wheel. He hadn't stopped a suspect. He hadn't uncovered anything suspicious. He had walked up to his own chief, questioned his right to own his vehicle, threatened him with handcuffs, searched his property without consent, and laughed. He had laughed. That single detail hit hardest of all.
Sir, if I had known who you were,
You would have done your job correctly, which means you already knew exactly what your job required.
Calloway had no answer for that, because there wasn't one. He knew the law. He had been trained in constitutional stops, in probable cause, in consent, in every boundary he had demolished today. He hadn't crossed those lines out of confusion. He had crossed them because the man on the other side looked like someone who couldn't stop him. That calculation had just cost him everything. Cole reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately, and held up his phone, screen facing outward.
I activated this the moment your lights appeared in my mirror.
you were recording the whole time.
Your body camera was running too. You were never unobserved, officer. Not for a single second of this stop.
Not 1 second. From the moment those lights hit the mirror, to this exact moment on the sidewalk. Every laugh, every dismissal, every illegal order, preserved, permanently. And here is what made it worse. Much worse. Calloway's own body camera had recorded everything too. The department's own equipment, worn on his own chest, had documented every constitutional violation he committed today. In high definition, from his own point of view, there was no version of events he could construct, no explanation he could offer, no union representative who could walk this back. The evidence wasn't in someone else's hands. It was on his own body. Calloway looked down at the folder, still trembling in his grip. His name at the top of the page, the signature at the bottom, and somewhere on Jefferson Avenue, a radio crackled.
Sergeant Reeves,
Chief,
I need you on Jefferson Avenue, now.
on my way, sir.
What happens now?
Now the department handles this the way it should have handled you twice before.
Twice before. Cole said it without anger, without satisfaction, just fact. Clean and surgical as everything else he had done today. And those two words told Calloway something that the document, the recording, even the revelation of who Cole was, hadn't fully delivered yet. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't luck. Cole had known about him, had read his file, had driven these streets specifically, looking for exactly this. Calloway hadn't been caught in a trap he stumbled into. He had been studied, tracked, and given enough rope by someone who knew precisely how he would use it. Down Jefferson Avenue, the sound of a second patrol car grew closer, and Officer Trent Calloway, still holding his own termination document, stood on the side of the road, waiting for consequences that were already in motion, before this afternoon had even begun.
Chief,
Sergeant,
what happened here?
Officer Calloway conducted an unlawful stop. Searched this vehicle without consent or probable cause. Twice warned, both times ignored.
Sergeant, it wasn't like that. I didn't know who he was.
Calloway, stop talking.
3 words. And somehow Sergeant Reeves had done in 3 words what Calloway hadn't managed in 27 minutes. She had taken control of the situation. She had been on the force 11 years. She had heard Calloway's name in complaint reports before. Twice. And looking at him now, standing on the side of Jefferson Avenue, holding what she could already see were official department documents. She didn't need the full story yet. The scene told her enough. Cole turned back toward Calloway, calm, unhurried, the way someone moves when they have already decided exactly what comes next. And none of it is up for discussion.
Sergeant, you know me. 11 years we've worked this department together.
I know your file, Calloway. So does he. So does Internal Affairs. And after today, so does everyone standing on that sidewalk.
Until today. 2 words that carried the weight of every complaint ever filed against him. Every victim who had been searched without cause. Every report quietly buried. Every investigation that somehow reached the same conclusion. Insufficient evidence to proceed. All of it. Compressed into 2 words. Delivered on a public street. In front of witnesses. By the one person in Brookdale with the authority. And the documented evidence. To make them stick. Calloway opened his mouth. Then closed it. Because there was nothing left. Every justification he had rehearsed on his way to this moment had already been answered. Not argued against. Answered. And across the street, something was shifting. The people who had been watching quietly were no longer quiet. A man near the corner said something to the woman beside him. She nodded slowly. Then louder. They need to fire him. Nobody disagreed. Someone else called out from further down the sidewalk. Always the same story. And then something happened that no department report would fully capture. The sound of spontaneous collective recognition. The sound of people who had seen this before. Watching it finally meet its consequence. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something quieter. And heavier. The sound of a community exhaling something it had been holding for a very long time. Calloway heard every word. Felt every second of it. Standing in his uniform. On his street. In front of his department's new chief. Completely exposed. This was the moment the badge stopped being armor. And became something else entirely. Evidence.
You stopped this vehicle without stating a cause.
The vehicle looked.
Without stating a cause. You ordered the driver out without legal basis.
I had reasonable.
You searched the interior after explicit refusal of consent. Then you opened private property. After being warned, directly, twice.
Sir, I was doing my job.
No. You were doing what you've always done. What nobody stopped you from doing. Until today.
Calloway turned slowly toward the sidewalk. Really looked at it for the first time since this stop began. The people standing there weren't strangers anymore. They were witnesses. Official ones. Every face a testimony. Every phone a deposition. He looked back at Cole, who was already reaching into the briefcase, removing the folder with the careful precision of someone who had handled evidence. For 24 years, he straightened it, closed the briefcase, and turned to face Calloway one final time.
Body camera footage, my recording, and this document. Everything Internal Affairs needs is already there.
Understood, Chief.
Badge.
One word. No elaboration. No speech. No anger. Just one word. That meant the end of 6 years. The end of 2 buried complaints. The end of every stop like this one. That had somehow survived without consequence. Calloway stood on Jefferson Avenue. Uniform still pressed. Badge still clipped to his chest. For approximately the last few seconds it would ever be.
Sir, I have a family?
So did every person you've pulled over without cause. Badge and weapon. Now.
There was no coming back from that. Not from the words. And not from the truth inside them. Calloway's hand returned to his badge. Fingers closing around it. The same badge he had adjusted confidently. When he first stepped out of that patrol car, that felt like another lifetime now. He unclipped it. Held it for 1 second longer than necessary. The way a person holds something they already know they're losing. Before placing it into Cole's open hand. Then the weapon. Slower. Heavier. Both hands. The street had gone very quiet. Not silent. Jefferson Avenue never went fully silent. But the particular quality of noise had changed. The way sound changes in a room where something serious has just happened. And everyone present understands it.
Chief Cole. Sir, I came as soon as Sergeant Reeves radioed.
Lieutenant, Officer Calloway conducted an unlawful stop and illegal search of my personal vehicle this afternoon. Full-body camera footage, personal recording, documentary evidence, all documented.
Calloway, do you have anything to say?
Ain't in nothing.
Nothing. 6 years on the force. 2 complaints, survived. Hundreds of stops. And when the moment came that actually mattered, he had nothing. Because everything he might have said had already been said by the evidence. Lieutenant Garrison turned back to Cole. The kind of look that passes between people who understand, without needing it explained. That something shifted today. In this department, on this street, that would not be shifting back.
Effective immediately, you are suspended pending internal affairs review. Based on the evidence presented and your prior complaint history, this review will be a formality.
A formality?
You're done, Calloway.
Done. Not suspended pending investigation with the possibility of return. Done. And everyone on Jefferson Avenue heard it. Garrison turned to Reeves, exchanged quiet words about the evidence chain, the body camera footage, the formal report timeline, professional, procedural, the machinery of accountability finally working, the way it was always supposed to. Cole stood to the side, watching, not with satisfaction, not with relief, with the focused attention of a man cataloging a result and already thinking about what came next. Because Calloway wasn't the department. He was a symptom of it. And symptoms pointed to something deeper. Something Cole had come to Brookdale specifically to find. And fix. Calloway remained where he had been standing. Since the moment Cole said badge, he hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't looked up. The patrol cars were still there. Lights still turning. Cutting blue and red across Jefferson Avenue in slow, silent rotation. But they weren't for a suspect anymore. They were for him, the man who had arrived on this street 27 minutes ago, certain of his authority, certain of his assumptions, certain that the man behind the wheel of that Escalade had no power over what happened next. He stood there now. No badge, no weapon, no case to make. No complaint that would quietly disappear this time. Just a man in a uniform. That no longer meant what he thought it meant. On a street where everyone had watched it stop meaning it.
You had every chance to walk away from this, Trent Calloway. Every single chance.
She was right. The legal question at the window, the clear refusal of consent, the warning before the trunk, the courtesy Cole had offered that Calloway had laughed at, every one of those moments had been an exit. He had walked past all of them, and now he stood alone, on the side of Jefferson Avenue. Career over, not because he had been set up, not because he had been unlucky, but because he had been exactly, precisely, unapologetically himself. The body camera footage dropped at 6 in the morning. By 7, 2 million views. By noon, every major news outlet had it. By evening, the name Trent Calloway meant something entirely different, to an entirely different world than it ever had before. The video showed everything, not edited, not summarized, everything. From the moment those lights hit the mirror, to the moment one word was spoken, and a badge was surrendered with trembling hands. People watched it once, then watched it again, then sent it to someone who needed to see it. Because this wasn't just the story of one officer. On one afternoon, on one street, it was a mirror, held up to something most people already knew existed, but had never watched travel, all the way to consequence. Inside the Brookdale Police Department, something shifted before the headlines even arrived. Officers who had worked alongside Calloway, who had heard the complaints and said nothing, who had trusted the system to keep protecting what it had always protected, felt it, not loudly, Not all at once, but permanently. Chief Adrian Cole released one statement. No press conference. No political language. Just truth. Delivered plainly. The lines that traveled furthest read simply, "This department will be held to the same standard it holds everyone else." The era of filed complaints that disappear quietly. Of illegal searches with no consequences. Of badges protecting what they were never meant to protect. That era is over. Patterns can be broken. Those words were shared in community group chats. Read aloud at city council meetings. Printed on signs outside the department the following week. By people who had been waiting years. For someone inside that building. To finally mean it. Callaway's termination was finalized within 72 hours. No appeal succeeded. Because the evidence hadn't left room for interpretation. And somewhere on Jefferson Avenue, traffic moved exactly as it always had. Steady, unhurried, ordinary. Except that something in Brookdale had changed. Something that couldn't be unfelt, unchallenged, or undone. Because accountability had finally shown up. In the place it was needed most. And it had arrived. In a black Cadillac Escalade. If this story did something to you, if it made you angry before it made you satisfied, if you felt every single chapter of it, then you already know this channel delivers differently. Hit subscribe right now. Because we find the stories that don't get told the way they deserve. And we tell them properly. Drop a like if watching Callaway hand over that badge gave you the satisfaction it deserved. And in the comments, tell us one thing. Which moment hit you hardest? Was it, "I wasn't asking," or that single word at the end? Badge, we read every comment. Every single one.